Business viewers, with the second longest coastline of any nation, Indonesia is surrounded by rich fishing grounds. But its waters, all of this time, are regularly plundered by large foreign trawlers, many from neighboring countries. Meanwhile, many domestic fishermen are struggling so hard to make a living because of depleted fish stocks, a lack of equipment, and a poor supply chain. Regarding to this main issue, the President has actually already strongly and firmly vowed to restore Indonesia's historical reputation as a maritime power as part of a broader platform of economic reforms, particularly through its marine and fisheries sector. This is MNC Business and you're on Economy. The government of Indonesia keep on doing their best effort to see flourishing investment in the maritime sector, both from domestic and foreign investors in the coming years. More legal certainty and huge potential in the maritime sector are expected to draw in business people. Indonesia's maritime and fishery potentials are not yet fully exploited, as investors so far are still lacking attention to these sectors, which actually over profitable resources. Now, the maritime sector is a natural resource which attracts the least investors. While it is a fact that most investment shares are still concentrated on, let's say, onshore business, the government will have to work hard and make efforts to attract investment into the maritime and fishery sector. We have the report for you.
As the largest archipelago country in the world, Indonesia has huge potential and abundant wealth in its territorial waters. The country's geography is conducive to the development of its fisheries. Indonesia is surrounded by seawater, and there are around thousands of rivers and lakes to be found throughout the country. Despite the stronger performance in the sector, Indonesia lacks the wherewithal to fully maximize its economic potential. Port transport facilities and infrastructure, particularly on the outer island of Indonesia, that appears to be obstacles for developing marine resources. Many of these islands remain unconnected to each other and the mainland. Indonesia's port infrastructure has suffered from neglect largely due to financial constraints over the years. Many of the ports are in bad shape and impede the country's internal and external maritime commerce, causing revenue losses, procedural delays, and high shipping costs. In fact, the shipping cost for a container from inter-island to Jakarta is more than 3 times as much as the same container cost from Jakarta to Singapore. As a consequence, Indonesia's maritime trade and commerce has failed to realize its full potential. On the other hand, the lack of human resources and weak regulation on maritime affairs and fisheries still hamper the exploration of marine resources in Indonesia. Many issues concerning overfishing, illegal fishing by foreign boats, and damage to the marine ecosystem lack effective resolution. Part of the issue lies in the sector's inability to attract investments. As a primary sector, fisheries see little investment inflows, both from domestic and foreign sources. Besides the sector's productive aspects and its contribution to Indonesia's export earnings, the fisheries sector is also crucial as a means of feeding the domestic populace. Indonesia is a major seafood consumer given its abundance and the fact that the country is also the 4th most populous worldwide. MNC Business Report for Economic Buzz, MNC Business Channel.
And to have a deeper view about optimizing Indonesian fishery sector, we have Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi. Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja, it is our privilege to have you in our talk show here in the English program, sharing your thoughts, sharing your standpoint and your take as well over the marine and fishery sector in Indonesia. First of all, Mr. Kusumaatmadja, we frequently hear about these two words, is closely related and familiar to us, marine and maritime, but sometimes Indonesian people in general, we found it difficult in terms of getting the main definition or major differences. What should we understand about the differences, sir?
Well, if we use the term maritime, it refers to seaborne activities like shipping, and also it's supporting infrastructure like ports and navigation and things of that sort. Also activities like offshore exploration. So, whilst if we use the term marine, it refers to resources and territory.
Yeah, resources and territory. So anything regarding this kind of a nation's sovereignty on our sea, land, and sea territories also strongly related to the marine issue.
Marine
Is that
issues,
what you are
yes.
saying?
And then if we talk about borders, we refer sea borders, not maritime borders.
I see, sea borders. Thank you so much for the sharing understanding on this. We got new vocabularies on this. Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja, we would like to focus only on the fishery sector as the part of the marine resources, huge potential that Indonesia have. Based on your point of view, sir, generally, how do you see the current condition of our fishery sector in general? Right away in our video, just on the introductory remark, I asked your question, sir. We are basically truly blessed by having this kind of abundant natural resources. But then again, you surprised me by saying, but Elmo, all of those blessings could be a curse if we don't know how to manage. What's behind that statement?
Well, I think the whole world, not only Indonesia, is now suffering from a phenomenon which is often referred to as IUU, fishing. It stands for illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries. It's not only Indonesia, but it's all over the world. And the number of fish is actually decreasing very fast. Unless the world takes action to stop this downward trend, then we will lose all the fish on our seas. Not only in Indonesia, but all over the world.
Mr. Sarwono, let's hold it over here. IUU system, what needs to be restored, what needs to be adjusted, and what needs to be changed dramatically at this. We are going to have another conversation this one. Make sure you are with us on Economic Bus. We are discussing about optimizing the fishery sector with Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transform. We would like to greet you business people in Singapore. You're on Economic Bus, the English talk show program that outlook the economic issue as well as the social issue for your business. We are still discussing about optimizing Indonesian fishery sector. We are very happy to have Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi. Pak Sarwono, early on we talked about this kind of IUU. It's illegal, unreported, unregulated system that it is still continuously and simultaneously happening and occurring in Indonesia. What's behind this kind of situation and what it takes for us to really break this kind of bad trap for Indonesia?
Again, I'd like to underline that IUU is a global problem. And the key word to use IUU, a control. We have to install a very good control capacity in order to prevent IUU from happening, and also in order to enable us to act against IUU after it has happened. Actually, this is what the Indonesian government is doing through the efforts of Minister Susi. She has made it clear that she will not tolerate these practices anymore by cracking down hard on these operators, and also by revising the regulations on capture fisheries. So what she intends to do is to limit activities in ocean-going fisheries. There is a very strong reason for that, and also to encourage us to deal more with or to be active more on coastal fisheries, which is easier to control. So there is a moratorium, I think, for some capture fisheries activities, which is needed for the time being, in order for us to be able to install a better control system, and to act faster in the future.
Mr. Sarwono, I pay attention to your word for the time being. Then when we talk about expecting the longer run result resulted from this kind of moratorium, how efficient and how effective do you think this kind of moratorium could give at least the detaining effect for those who still do the mispractices on the Indonesian water territory?
Well, I think moratorium is necessary because it can act as a brake, yeah, on those people who want to violate the rules. It is also necessary in order to provide the time, breathing space, if you may call it, yeah, for the Indonesian government to establish stricter rules, to train people in order to, you know, to make the rules work in the future. It takes time. In the meantime, then a lot of ocean-going fisheries will have to be very careful, yeah, about their activities, because the government is keeping an eye on them and enforcing this moratorium. That's why the price of tuna has gone up in Indonesia, because it's not easy anymore to go out to the sea and to.
So you find it very effective and useful, even though just for the time being, but at least the government already take the first initiative and the first step. Right before the talk show, Mr. Sarwono, we happen to talk about this, that in the end, by the time we talk about optimization of our marine and maritime sector in Indonesia, we talk about safeguarding our national sovereignty. By this kind of recent policies enacted by our current government as well, to what extent actually this also can shape or build an image or perception about Indonesia in the global market, that we are very firm in terms of safeguarding our nation's sovereignty regarding these water resources?
I think the world knows that it's important for us to exercise our authority and sovereignty, but we also have to do it wisely. Yeah?
Agree.
Because we don't want the world to see us bragging about it. You know, you just do what is in your best interest, do it quietly and effectively. That's it. Because if we brag too much about it, then people would see this as a symptom of unwarranted aggressiveness. Yeah?
It will hold them back in a way, right? When we are too bragging this around and exaggerating everything.
And it can also lead to direct or indirect retaliation.
I see, yes. Back on Economic Buzz, this program can also be viewed through StarHub Asia 1-to-1 and MNC International. Both channel are in Singapore. With me, Erwin Surya Brata. He's left Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi. Mr. Sarwono, by the time we talk about creating a set of ideal controls system, geographically speaking, by the time we talk about Indonesia context, it will be very, very difficult. Everyone is still fully aware of this kind of interconnectivity issue. We have also thousands of islands, and it's not that simple in terms of the monitoring. Why is it up to now we haven't found at least one single ideal control system work and applied very well the whole Indonesian territory?
Well, I think finding the system is not that difficult because the technology is there.
On your take, it's not actually that difficult.
No, it's not that. And it's the technology is freely available on the market. Companies are competing with each other in
technology adoption.
In offering such technology, and it has been applied already. So we cannot complain about that. What we have, what we face is a difficulty in supporting systems in which the technology benefits could be taken advantage of. We lack people with integrity, for instance. We don't really care whether people steal or not.
Really?
Yeah, that's a problem. And sometimes some corrupt government officials are also conspiring to steal from our seas. And this is what has, fed the anger of the present minister. So she has taken up a very tough stance on these issues because it is intolerable, actually, how these people are stealing, under our noses, in spite of the surveillance system which is already in place and which is, I think, one of the best in the world that we have.
All of those policies, regulation, when everything already in place, will be, let's say, not much useful if it is not automatically followed by the public awareness. The sense of belonging, sense of owning our own natural resources, especially regarding this kind of marine sector? What it takes to create this kind of awareness among people? Because, sir, as we know, once Minister Susi enact this and that policy, noises is always happening all the time. It's being overexposed by the media as well, getting much more chaotic, and it's so complicated. How to synergize this, that in the end, this is for the own good sake for of the people, the welfare of the Indonesian people.
That's why it's very important, for the time being at least, to limit capture fisheries activities on the open seas, and to encourage people to fish close to the shore, because the shore is where people live. So people can be more aware of fishery activities when the activities are close to the shore. So the people can also safeguard our waters and help in controlling IUU. If we let capture fisheries activities go unchecked on the open sea, how can we be aware?
It's going to get so much worse, and this is something we need to. You are still with us on Economy Bus. We still bring our discussion with Mr. Sarwono about optimizing. By the time we talk about the fisheries sector, there are several subsectors. We need also to share to our viewer. You already mentioned capture fisheries, culture fisheries, marine culture, as well as aquaculture. Among those I just mentioned as the following, you seems like to pay attention more on the captures fisheries. What should be eyed on by the time we talk about optimizing the capture fisheries in Indonesia?
Well, again, the key word in capture fisheries is control. So control is so important, and if we want to expand our fisheries activities, we should switch to aquaculture, to culture fisheries instead of capture fisheries. And we have a very great capacity in, or potential in aquaculture, in culture fisheries, because we have a very large sea territory, about close to 15,000 islands, with a lot of calm and protected waters, with still excellent environmental quality, especially in the east of Indonesia. That's where we ought to expand or develop our culture fishery activities. And the market is very strong, actually. So we have a very bright prospect in culture fisheries and aquaculture. But again, if it comes to capture fisheries, I would like to stress again the need to control these activities and to get as many people away from those activities and find other jobs.
So in short, you strongly believe that all of those supportive factors are basically already here and existed by the time we talk about shifting our mindset paradigm all the way, only focusing on the capture fisheries into becoming the aquaculture environment as well as the culture fisheries environment. You are watching Economic Bus. We still have Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi to share his view of the topic that we bring up. Talkshow. Thank you so much for standing by for us, Mr. Sarwono. You represent as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi. Share with our viewer more. So what do we need to know about Transformasi and what our strategic role Transformasi can play representing us as Indonesian people in common in bridging us toward voicing our aspiration to the government?
Transformasi is a non-profit organization being supported by the private sector. And what we do is to provide assistance to local government in order to improve capacity, especially in managing their resources with the private sector as well with the communities. So part of our concern is the management of coastal zone. And in this sense, Transformasi is now negotiating an MOU with the Ministry for Marine Affairs and Fisheries in order for us to be able to assist the ministry in capacity building issues on concerning coastal communities and also concerning coastal districts.
How well actually transformation also can play a role in terms of bridging from the government to the public, because we talk about the vice versa, public to the government, but what about government in communicating something to the public, because sometimes we have this kind of boundaries, we have the obstacle that we have this kind of clash, communication among the public and also the government. What I mean by public here is like Indonesian people in general. How transformation will play as the mediator in terms of channeling the government?
Well, there are several roles that are available to us in transformation. One is what we call the public awareness program, directed not only to the people but also to the local government concerned, because sometimes there are important issues that escape them, because these are issues which are new or maybe in which they are not familiar with. The second is we can also engage in conflict resolution, because if you have dynamics, the economic life in a region, then there is always a potential for conflict, and we have to transform that potential of conflict into a potential for cooperation, for instance. We can also assist in doing these things.
If I may rephrase your statement when you talk about this kind of fishery production growth, the dangers, the challenges faced by the fishery sector, Indonesia is not the only one. Again, this is something we need to underline and bear in mind, that we are not the only one suffer on the global scale, others as well. But where is our position, and to what level we can also play a role as the global citizens in terms of together we can sustain a much better environment to support our fishery sector?
Well, I think Indonesia has been very active in international fisheries conferences and agreements. To give an example, the Food and Agriculture Organization has recently published a voluntary guidelines for small-scale fisheries. These guidelines were successfully completed through the efforts of Indonesia and other developing countries, because formerly all the regulations on fisheries only concern big players, but we highlighted the issue of us artisanal or small-scale fisheries.
So I believe proportional attention needs to be given as well for the small-scale industrial player in the fishery sector. We have reached our last session discussing about optimizing Indonesian fishery sector, and we are going to have another view from Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja as the Senior Advisor at Transformasi to conclude his view toward our topic. What can be shared by the time I'm asking your opinion about our current administration in terms of becoming firm in safeguarding our nation's sovereignty through the fishery sector?
Well, I think Minister Susi Pujiastuti has been doing the right thing. Of course, she cannot please everyone. But I think she's on the right track. What remains to be seen from her is her commitment to aquaculture, to culture fisheries and mariculture, because there is so much to be done there. So that's what we ought to wait for from her. And also, we also can look forward to a bright future in marine tourism, because the government has released a lot of enabling policies in order for marine tourism to develop. So I think we have to watch two ministers. One is Susi Pujiastuti, Marine Affairs and Fisheries, and one is Arif, the Minister of Tourism. They have to produce something brilliant, in the next
breakthrough in a way.
Breakthrough in the next 3 years or so. But for the time being, I can say that those two people are on the right track.
They are the key major player in terms of bringing the change. This is something I also put it into note as well. By the time we talk about this capture fisheries, we cannot simply expect 100% fair capture fisheries practices by the time we talk about the diplomatic relations with the other countries and our neighboring countries especially. But we can actually expect a much controllable system on the capture fisheries practices. which way should we be sticking around on by the time I'm asking your tips in terms of can gain this kind of self-respect, Mr. Sarwono, from our other neighbors?
So I think capture fisheries should be confined to the coastal area. And then, of course, you can allow capture fisheries to operate on the high seas or in our special economic zone, but with very tight control.
Should be very, very tight.
And then the coastal fisheries should also enjoy the supervision of the people. But the people would have to have a very active role in making sure that fishery activities are controllable.
Yeah. By enacting this kind of strict and firm control and regulation, of course, we can gain our self-respect as a nation. But at the same time, how can we create this kind of pro and business-friendly environment? Because we need somehow investment, and investment sometimes cannot merely depend inside us internally. We need also to have the foreign investment on the sector.
Well, I think if we perform with integrity, with fairness, and with clear rules, then investors will be happy. What makes investors unhappy is unclear rules, and then corrupt officials, and then unexplainable bottlenecks. Bottlenecks that cannot be explained. These are the things that deter investment.
And everything needs to be simplified for this case. Mr. Sarwono Kusumaatmadja, you are the senior advisor at Transformasi. We really appreciate for your time. Best luck for you, sir. Best luck for Transformasi. Let's wrap up our talk show for this time. Hope to have you soon. Buzz with other issues to bring up in the discussion. I'm Edwin Surya Brata. Wishing you best luck in doing your business today. Let's talk about your business. Ibas on MNC business. We are the first business channel.
Terima kasih nih.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Sarwono. 1 jam Bapak bersama kami.